Toronto's Police Services Board approves a nearly $50 million increase to the force's budget, despite criticism from concerned citizens.
This proposed budget increase is $50 million that is siphoned away from families who are facing an uphill battle with the rising cost of living.
Advocates argue the boost in funding won't help improve public safety, but instead deprive residents of much-needed social services and infrastructure upgrades. Plus, Toronto police searching for suspects tonight after a 17-year-old boy is stabbed near his high school in the city's West End. And
it was heartbreaking to hear of the death in Liberty Village encampment.
More than 150 faith leaders and advocates launch a campaign demanding the opening of 24/7 warming centers following the death of a homeless man over the weekend. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. The Toronto Police Board has approved a request to increase the police budget by $48 million. Now, the city's new police chief and Mayor John Tory say the money is necessary to improve public safety. But the move is drawing criticism from activists and advocates who say the funds would be much better spent on social services. Ali Chasson reports.
You're already killing too many people. You're already harming and wounding and traumatizing too many people while you ask for more.
The Toronto Police Board meeting heard from dozens of not just concerned citizens, but outraged, among them journalist and activist Desmond Cole.
So forget about an increase. You need to be defunded. You need to be abolished.
Toronto's new chief of police bucks that notion.
Our primary focus this year and in years to come is and will be on core service delivery and the prevention of any further degradation in service.
Today's meeting went over the $48.3 million police budget increase, which is backed by Mayor John Tory. The money will go towards hiring more officers and 911 operators, $2 million for programming aimed at addressing youth violence, $12 million for the Toronto Community Crisis Service, which sends mental health experts to certain crisis calls, and $18 million for scheduled pay raises for the police.
We have a responsibility to ask for the investment and resources we need to meet the expectation of our residents and to perform our duties.
Not every deputant was there to advocate for defunding the police, but where the money could be better spent.
$50 million that Torontonians will not see dedicated to improving transportation and other vital infrastructure in our city. This is $50 million that will not go towards housing in a city where unhoused people are facing significant strife.
Toronto lawyer Dave Shelnut, whose clients have cases against the police for anti-black racism, points out this public apology a few months ago.
As an organization, we have not done enough to ensure that every person in our city receives fair and unbiased policing.
And here we are a few months post-apology, and rather than requesting reflection by, redesign, and retasking of TPS, Mayor Tory proposes to award him with $50 million.
Today, the 7 new city councillors elected this year made it clear where they stand. Quote, as newly elected city councillors, we are joining together to advocate for this year's city budget to prioritize investments in social services that sustain and support the lives of residents and promote healthy communities. But it falls short of any opposition to the $50 million destined for the cops. City Council votes on the proposed budget in February. Ali Chasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Meanwhile, the TTC board has passed this year's proposed budget, one that the CEO is calling the toughest in decades. It includes a fare hike and a reduction in services. And as Meg Roberts reports, this isn't going over well with some riders.
As of April 3rd, it's going to cost you more to ride the TTC. The board just passed a 10-cent increase for adult and youth single fare tickets. But are you getting an increased level of service? It depends on who you ask. TTC is proposing a reduction of services, blaming ridership not returning to pre-pandemic levels.
That is not the way to win riders back. What we need to see is more investment in transit to boost service and lower fares.
Subways are set to take the brunt of the cuts, with service decreasing by 15%. Streetcars will go from 92% service to 87%. It's unclear where these service reductions will happen, concerning for riders who spoke at today's meeting.
We need more service. We're a city that's growing really rapidly. We have bus routes and we have LRTs that are coming out. We need to have more service.
TTC says aspects of their service will be better.
We're introducing streetcar midday cleaning on most downtown routes.
Also, $53 million from the city is being proposed to hire additional outreach workers and special constables. It says the service decrease will be relatively small and will focus on off-peak times.
We have huge budgetary issues because of the lower ridership. And what the TTC are doing is looking at the routes, seeing what the ridership is, and then matching the capacity for that. So that should ameliorate that concern.
Funding will also go towards preparing Line 5 of the Eglinton Crosstown, despite the project not being complete, Line 6, the Finch West LRT, and Line 3, Scarborough bus replacement. The TTC's operating budget still has to be approved by City Council. Meg Roberts, CBC News, Toronto.
GO train users may want to give themselves 1 extra minute to get to the platform now. In an effort to stay on schedule, trains are now closing their doors 1 minute before they pull away. And we spoke to some riders about that change.
They've got tons of signage and they're announcing it pretty much every 5 minutes. So I think if it helps keeps the train on time, then who cares?
I mean, I show up early usually, so that's cool with me.
I'm an employee with Metrolink, and I actually didn't realize that today was the first day that they're starting the train leaving a minute earlier, so I actually missed the train because of that 1 minute.
I just need to mentally subtract 1 minute from the scheduled time, which is not fun to have to do.
Metrolink says it will take time for customers to adjust, adding that the change will help trains leave right on time. But one transit expert says the move will do little to combat delays.
You want to improve the system, improve signaling system so that you're not delayed at the approaches to Union or Union Station. If you have to improve systems, make sure that you respond to emergency brake incidents sooner than later. That kind of things will reduce commuter frustration, but just 60 seconds earlier shutting doors, that would cause many problems.
GO Transit says platforms without accessibility ramps will close first, followed by the accessible platforms. The change will not impact the Up Express or GO buses. The Toronto District School Board confirming tonight that a 17-year-old boy who was stabbed in the city's West End this afternoon is a student at Central Toronto Academy. The teen was stabbed off school property, and as Greg Ross tells us, police are still searching for the suspects.
Police are providing very few details about what exactly happened here, but what we do know is that just after 12 o'clock this afternoon, a 17-year-old boy was stabbed in this alleyway here behind me. That teen was transported to hospital on an emergency run, and paramedics tell us that he had life-threatening injuries. At this point, police say they are still searching for suspects. Now, we were able to obtain surveillance video from a local business in the area, and what you can see on that video is that at the time of the stabbing, there was a group of people in this alleyway. It appears there was some sort of altercation. At one point, you see several people fleeing the scene. Police are also taking a close look at this video. We know that they've been canvassing the area here, going door to door, looking for any potential witnesses. At one point, they even had the K-9 unit out here searching the area. This happened just steps from Central Toronto Academy High School. We've been in touch with the Toronto District School Board. They have told us that at no point today did they put that school into a lockdown situation. Police are asking anyone who may have been in the area of Ossington and Harbord Streets at around noon hour today, and maybe you saw something unusual, to come forward and tell police anything that you may have seen. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
6 people were taken to hospital after a multi-vehicle crash on Highway 403 off-ramp in Oakville this morning.
All told, we have 8 vehicles involved. 6 people went to hospital. 1 of them went to a trauma center. A school bus involved, a commercial vacuum truck, and other passenger vehicles involved as well.
OPP Sergeant Carrie Schmidt says the truck was traveling westbound on the ramp to Upper Middle Road when it collided with several vehicles. There were no children on the school bus at the time of the crash. The ramp was closed for several hours this morning as police investigated. Let's go to Kim McDonald now from the Weather Network for a first check on your forecast. And Kim, we're now into the second week of the new year. The sun, though, really not making much of an appearance so far.
Kelda, a lot of cloud cover on this map. It seems like it's never ending, doesn't it? I mean, it's mild, so that's the good news. I'll find two pieces of good news. One, it's mild, if you like it that way. Two is that the minutes of daylight are extended. We have 10 more minutes since the year started, so not bad. We're adding a little bit every day. Not a lot of sunlight, mind you, but daylight. So here we go. Where have we seen the sun? On the 2nd, we saw a quick break, and on the 7th. So this has been several days. If you need a little vitamin D, you're probably going to want to stock up because there's not a ton of sunshine in the forecast. A little bit of mixing in the overnight in Hamilton, -1. Windsor's at -3. If anyone has seen a break, it's Windsor. But a few flurries to start the day in Windsor on Tuesday morning, -1. In Toronto, it'll feel like -5 with the winds. And then temperatures above normal again for the afternoon. And I'll be back with where that sun is.
Thanks, Kim. Well, dozens of faith leaders are launching a campaign calling on Toronto residents to write to the mayor to demand more warming centers be open. This comes after they penned an open letter to the city last week and after an encampment fire left one man dead this past weekend. Dale Manukduk has the story.
Officials say that on Saturday, a fire began in a Liberty Village encampment and left one man dead. Some say his death was preventable and that the city should have more warming centers and open them 24/7.
This is a very easy fix. There are buildings empty downtown. There are churches empty downtown. There are government spaces empty downtown. Most of us are working from home. We could do this.
2 days before the fatal fire, Reverend Alexa Gilmore and over 150 faith leaders and advocates for the unhoused penned and delivered a letter to Mayor John Tory and City Council demanding better service. The city says that changes to operations would have cost implications.
The mayor and the majority of council seem far more ready to spend $48 million to increase a $1.1 billion police budget.
In 2016, the city did operate a 24/7 drop-in program that cost just over $400,000. As it stands, warming centers are generally activated by Toronto's medical officer of health based on a forecast of -15 degrees Celsius or colder or a wind chill of -20 degrees Celsius or colder.
-15 degrees is ludicrous. It's arbitrary. It doesn't actually make any sense, and it doesn't protect people's lives when they need us most.
The city currently operates 3 warming centers with a capacity of 112 people.
If you're homeless in Etobicoke, there's nothing for you. And so we need more warming centers across the entire city. We need more beds in those shelters.
If not, advocates say more unhoused people will die. Their names end up being etched here at the Toronto Homeless Memorial, a block away from City Hall. Organizers are planning on adding 10 names to the memorial tomorrow, including a man who froze to death on Christmas Day and the man who died in Saturday's fire. But unfortunately, they haven't confirmed his identity.
The police told us, confirmed for us one name, and then earlier today said, oh wait, no, maybe it wasn't him. It might have been this other guy.
If they can't identify the deceased, they'll wait until February when they add even more names to the memorial. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
It's very distressing for me as a nurse to know that they had this information and yet they do not want to act on it.
Coming up, documents obtained by CBC Toronto show the province realized a controversial bill capping public sector wages could drive nurses out of the profession. We'll have reaction after the break. Plus, welcome back. CBC News has obtained provincial government documents that show Ministry of Health officials recognize that Bill 124 was a challenge to keeping nurses in the profession. Now, the bill caps wages for nurses and other public sector workers. It was recently ruled unconstitutional by a court, but the Ford government is appealing the decision. Well, tonight, opposition parties and nursing groups are once again calling on the government to drop that fight. Lorena Redekop has the story.
Nurses have long protested against Bill 124. These documents are the first record of someone inside the health ministry expressing concern about the bill. They show the Ministry of Health recognized that shortages of nurses and personal support workers had become worse, and one challenge to retaining staff concerns about wage disparity via Bill 124. This is included in a transition binder for the incoming Minister of Health, Sylvia Jones. The documents also mention nurses leaving frontline positions, with a lack of new nurses to replace those retiring. Written in bold, we must retain the nurses we have and educate more.
It's very distressing for me as a nurse to know that they had this information and yet they do not want to act on it. They don't want to make it better in the healthcare system. And that's a dishonor. It's a dishonor to every person who needs to access healthcare in Ontario.
They now have to answer to their own documents, to their own ministerial briefings. And the writing is now on the wall and the ball is in their court.
1, 2.
All three opposition parties and nursing organizations say it's an extra reason for the government to stop its appeal after a judge ruled Bill 124 unconstitutional. The bill caps public sector wages at a maximum 1% a year, including for nurses.
Not only they chose to ignore the advice, but worse even, they decided to appeal despite all of it. They decided to appeal the court decision that deemed this bill unconstitutional. So it only makes us more upset.
Last month, the Premier had this message for nurses.
I just want to thank them. Yes, we're going to appeal. My hands are tied on what I can say. It's in front of the courts.
In a statement today, a spokesperson for the health minister didn't respond to the questions about Bill 124 contributing to staff shortages. Instead, she pointed to increased numbers of people studying nursing. Though the nursing organizations say that doesn't make up for how many people are leaving frontline jobs in hospitals. Lorenda Redicop, CBC News, Toronto.
Municipalities across the GTA are having to fill million-dollar holes in their budgets. This after the Ontario government limited the fees they can charge home builders. The province says the fees disincentivize development and drive up the cost of housing. Now, a CBC Toronto survey of local governments has found that many residents could be facing some hefty tax increases to make up for the lost revenue. Ryan Patrick Jones has those details.
The next phase in our bold and transformative plan to get 1.5 million homes built in the next 10 years.
Ever since Housing Minister Steve Clark introduced the More Homes Built Faster Act, cities and towns across Ontario have argued it will severely limit their ability to raise badly needed revenue. CBC Toronto reached out to all 25 GTA municipalities to ask how much money they stand to lose and the property tax increases they're considering to make up the difference. 7 didn't provide a response. 10 are still crunching the numbers. The remaining 8 say possible tax hikes range from as low as 5 to 15% in Newmarket to more than 100% in East Gwillimbury. Dollar-wise, Mississauga says overall the average tax bill could go up by $680, while Vaughan taxpayers could have to pay a whopping $1,300 to $1,500 extra.
Obviously, we're in a bit of a bind.
The town of Aurora expects a $29 million shortfall over the next 10 years, which Mayor Tom Marakis says would require either a 6% tax increase, cuts to services, or both.
Maybe is it something like sidewalk clearing when it comes to snow removal? So some of the things that we've added on over the years that have become above and beyond your regular services.
Toronto stands to lose $230 million each year. Making that up with property taxes would require a 6% increase as well. But Mayor John Tory says he expects the province to replace every dollar. In a letter sent last year to the Association of Ontario Municipalities, Minister Clark said cities would be, quote, kept whole if they meet their housing targets. But he's also claimed cities have been hoarding billions of dollars in reserve funds.
So if you look at the top 10 municipalities, it's probably around $6 billion. And the City of Toronto has about $2.25 billion in reserves.
All of these suggestions were sitting on some huge pile of money that's like a piggy bank we could just go and reach into and grab a few million here and there, was never with any solid foundation whatsoever.
To figure out a way forward, the province says it will conduct independent audits of Toronto and some other municipalities. Clark says this will help establish the facts so improvements can be made and alternative ways of raising money explored. Ryan Patrick Jones, CBC News, Toronto.
And this is a live look at the Toronto skyline. Mainly cloudy tonight with a freezing drizzle advisory in effect. We'll check back in with Kim for a look at your extended forecast after the break. Stay with us. Let's go back to Kim McDonald now from the Weather Network for a more detailed look at your forecast. And Kim, it's been a relatively mild start to the year so far.
Let's begin with what is normal for this time of year. So a normal high would be -2, a normal low around -10. We have been nowhere near our normal lows. In fact, overnight lows have barely scratched 0. So we were 9 days without the temperature dropping below the freezing mark in January. Very rare. It's only happened once before this. And that means not just January, but between December and March. We often see the temperature drop down below 0, especially when our normal is -10. Let's take a look at what's happening for the next few days. So more cloud cover in the overnight hours and through the morning. We may see a little bit of freezing drizzle around the GTA. So the possibility is there. Hamilton included in that. Some advisories have been issued. Keep it in mind. It shouldn't be heavy. This is looking ahead to the long range forecast. So this is Thursday. That's when we're getting our next soaking rain, which is unusual too for January. In fact, normally in January, we get about 25 millimeters of rain. We've already had 29 this year. With that additional rain expected Thursday, we could be set to be in the top 10, maybe even the top 7 rainiest Januaries on record. Yeah, only because we normally would be seeing snow this time of year, not because we've had an exorbitant amount of rain. So here we go. There's the cold front that's sliding south that could bring that freezing drizzle through the overnight and into the morning hours. We're going to look at pretty calm conditions through Wednesday, and then on Thursday, late day, the next system comes in bringing the rain. When it does so, the winds will pick up as we normally see with a system that's advancing. So we see from this map, so this is Thursday afternoon, the winds start to get cranked up a little bit. There'll be more around Lake Huron and Georgian Bay as well. So here's your 7-day forecast. Now it does not look like we won't see the sun, or now it looks like we'll see the sun on the weekend. Windsor, similar situation for you.
Thanks so much, Kim. And that is our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Maribel Tarouk has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6, and I will see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night, everyone.